This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to look at the LG G3. This is LG's flagship Android smartphone for 2014, 5.5-inch Quad HD display in here, the Snapdragon 801, latest greatest quad-core CPU. Think of this as the quad phone. 4K video recording, keeps going on from there, and the revised design is pretty nice looking. We're going to look at it now. So this is it. You guys have been asking for it. Here it is, the LG G3. Now, this one is a Korean model phone. Happily, these days, these things are world phones, so we actually have it working with an AT&T SIM and even have LTE. You can see right up there, LTE signal. So good times that. We can actually test it out fully. 5.5-inch display, 2560 by 1440 resolution. That's madness. That's the same resolution as the WQHD display Lenovo ThinkPad Carbon, the X1 model that we reviewed. So usually that's a real stellar display on a laptop. Here, having it on a 5.5-inch smartphone is, well, maybe even overkill. That gives it over 500 ppi pixel density, about 538. To put that in perspective, the iPhone's around 326. It's got a smaller display, so that makes the requirements a little lower there. 300 to 325 is supposed to be around where you can't resolve individual pixels anymore, holding it fairly normally fairly close to your face, not like 2 inches away from the screen. And the Samsung Galaxy S5 is around 441 ppi, so you got even more here. Is it too much? Well, I don't know if there's such a thing as too much. Does it make much of a difference? Not so much. Looking at the back of the phone, LG did a miraculous job of actually making this look like metal. This is genuine plastic back here. However, it looks a little bit more shiny on camera than it does in person, to be honest. And at first blush, you probably would mistake this for metal. However, the feeling is plastic, and that's not a bad thing because it doesn't get ice cold. It's not quite as slippery. And again, even though it looks pretty shiny in video, it catches a lot of reflections from our studio lights, it's not that shiny. It's not the old LG and even the old Samsung kind of icky, grimy, super slippery plastic kind of thing going on. It has a texture to it. It's nice. And if we compare it to something like the back of the HTC One M8, this here, genuine metal. This here, not genuine metal. You can see there's a lot of similarity going on. Also similarity in the kind of curves. They both have flattened off bottoms. And boy, the HTC is a slippery phone there. And then they have tapering kind of sides. So I would say design language is shockingly similar. What isn't similar is LG is sticking with their rear control buttons. No volume buttons on the side, no power button on the side. They are on the back here. LG says it's omni-handed, and if you're holding it like so, your finger naturally falls there. They try to make it tactile. It does dip down a little bit. The center button's a little more shiny. I still find I often hit the wrong button, though, and I was turning around to look before I touch it so I don't turn off the screen when I'm watching video, when I really just wanted to raise the volume or something. 13 megapixel camera here. We have a two-tone flash as well. Speaker is down here. It's a 1-watt speaker. LG's kind of proud of that. It's a reasonably loud sounding phone. And if we look back up at the camera here, notice we have another little window here. This has a laser for laser focusing. No, you can't actually see it, so you can't like make your cat go crazy and do laser pointer tricks with it, but it's for assisting camera focus. Interesting thought there. It actually came from LG's robotic vacuum cleaner division, where it's used to sense depth in a room, so it does help speed things up a little bit. Up top, pretty simple, we got our microphones. Now, because this is a Korean model, for those of you who don't know, Koreans love TV in their phones, terrestrial TV, so it actually has an antenna. You will not be getting this on your US and probably not even in your Euro models. Obviously, the sides have nothing on them because those volume controls have been moved. There's a little divot here. So you can actually, yes, remove this back cover. It looks like it's a monobody kind of device, but it's actually not. So you can take the back cover off, and you can remove the battery. Awesome. Nobody wants Samsung to have the patent on that feature these days, since so few other high-end smartphones are offering it. 3,000 milliamp battery. That's quite a high-capacity battery. Some interesting, pretty blue translucent plastic here. No idea what that's for. And here we have stacked slots. The bottom is a micro SD card slot. The bottom is rather the micro SIM card slot. The upper one is the micro SD card slot. LG says it's compatible to cards up to 128 gigs. Our highest capacity that we have in-house is the 64 gig, and it works just fine. On the bottom we have our micro USB port, and we have headphone jack, another microphone hole. Here, notice how small the bezel is. This is a little metallic accent right here. Bezels are small, it keeps the phone small. Despite the fact that it's 5.5 inches, this is not a honky giant monster here. It does have on-screen buttons. It's going to use up a little of your screen real estate. Google prefers that folks go with on-screen buttons these days, manufacturers. So, well, LG has done that. And they have the launcher buttons down here, customizable. As always with LG's UI, they give you a lot of customization. This is an IPS display, but you can notice how there's a little shift in clarity as we move it, a little bit more than you might expect for IPS. It's not terrible, but that's what it is. This right now is set to maximum brightness. This is not the brightest display I've seen. This is around 365 nits of brightness. So outdoors you might have a little trouble seeing. I mean, that's not deadly dim or anything like that, but it's not as violently bright as some smartphones on the market. Like, well, the iPhone 5S gets pretty darn bright, and the Galaxy S5 can too. So here we have a little size lineup to give you an idea of the size. Galaxy S5 right here, of course, this is our LG G3 in my hand. HTC One M8, the closest in size really is the M8 and the LG G3, and there's this 5.7-inch Samsung Galaxy Note 3. So, you know, for a 5.5-inch phone, it's surprisingly not that big, right? It's about the size of the HTC One M8, a little bit wider, and not too much bigger than the Galaxy S5, which is a very petite phone given the 5.1-inch display. So LG did a real good job of keeping this phone small despite the very large display. So the LG G3, like I said, comes with the latest Snapdragon 801 quad-core CPU, 2.5 gigahertz. That's just slightly faster than the Snapdragon 800. It's not a huge difference there, but many of our flagships are now up to the 801. Particularly the Adreno 330 graphics gets a little performance boost in memory handling. This model has 3 gigs of RAM and 32 gigs of internal storage. There will be a 2 gig model, 2 gigs of RAM with 16 gigs of storage. We don't know what carriers are going to have what just yet, so sorry to say. LG has said that they optimized this for working well on 2 gigs of RAM. Runs Android KitKat 4.4, latest greatest operating system, and it has LG's new, much lighter weight UI, a lot less over-the-top, kind of touch-whizzy kind of thing, and now getting a little bit more flattened looking. If we take a look at the home screen and the icons, you can see the home screen, they're kind of going for muted tones instead of those really bright, blingy primary colors right here. And the icons are left largely unchanged. Some of them are. And again, this one's for Korean market, so there are regional differences, including regional taste for such thing as icons, but it's a lot quieter, calmer looking. And we have the apps versus widgets drawer here. We can change our views, uninstall right from the home screen. And in terms of widgets, there's not too many things LG's loaded on here. I have left their weather and clock widget, and they have this thing right here, which is their attempt at kind of doing the same thing as Google Now. It doesn't actually have any information to tell me right now, so it's not. But it does pretty much the same thing. It tells me about upcoming appointments, the weather, all that sort of thing. Given Google Now, I'm not really sure why that exists so much. You've got your usual kind of access to settings for LG, only visually toned down again and not too busy down here. So you have quick access to your radios. We've got the Q Slide app, Q Remote. This does have a wireless AV remote control for your TV. Q Voice is their voice control, airplane mode access. You can actually edit this and choose which things you want up here. If you want to get to all settings, you'll see the 4-tabbed approach, not unlike Samsung. Now there are lots of settings here, including things like you can set up for one-handed operation if you want to do that. It uses the camera if you wish to keep an eye on you and not turn off the screen when you're looking at it. All sorts of stuff like that. And whether or not the back button brings up, if you press and hold it, multitasking. So say we want to do that. You can have 2 apps, you just drag them. Press and hold to drag one there in one window. And say we want to have, oh, I don't know, TV app's not going to work, so let's just go with gallery on the bottom. And so we have their version of multitasking here, side, top to bottom. Multitasking going on. You got your Q memo application, pretty much unchanged from previous LGs as well, on board. Thanks to the Snapdragon 801 and the relatively lightened up UI, it handles it pretty well. I notice an occasional little micro lag. Now this guy is pre-release. Seriously pre-release, so we hope that those things are ironed out, but nothing real terrible there in terms of performance. Phone also has LG's knock-on feature, so you can double tap on the screen to wake it up. There's also unlock codes. You can set up a pattern to unlock it for more security. I can bet that everybody's going to be doing on their phone and thinking that's secure. It's not. Not if everybody uses it. Back camera here, f2.4 lens, has HDR again. It has that laser focus, and we'll take a look at that in depth in a bit later. Also has optical image stabilization. We love you, LG, for that. Thank you so much. No more shaky video. Dual band Wi-Fi 802.11 AC, Bluetooth 4.0, NFC, the usual GPS with GLONASS. The bottom USB port supports Slim port, and the phone has a 2.1 megapixel front camera. So how about performance and benchmarks? Quadrant, it scored 23,701. Antutu, 33,711. 3D Mark, Ice Storm Unlimited, 17,477. Sun Spider, JavaScript tests where lower numbers are better. Using the WebKit web browser, 605. So those are pretty good numbers, and that's on par with the HTC One M8 and also the Samsung Galaxy S5, which is pretty impressive considering the fact that you've got a higher resolution display to drive here. Now, the Galaxy S5 did score a bit better on 3D Mark, for example, by about 1,000 points, but they're both so relatively high that, hey, for the added resolution, we'll say that's pretty good. The phone will have LTE 4G, like I said, even ours does, even though it's a Korean model, happens to have the right bands to work on AT&T. Of course, it'll also have 3G fallback, usual mobile hotspot, all those sort of features. So since the high-resolution display is obviously the star of the show, we have the same Bravia 4K test video going on the Samsung Galaxy S5 up here and the LG G3 at the bottom. Obviously, there's a little difference in screen size, and you can see the difference in maximum brightness. They are both set to maximum brightness right now. Color saturation is still higher on the Galaxy. Of course, Galaxy displays are known for their super-duper color saturation. So you can see there's a little bit more than pixels going on. Contrast is also a bit higher. In text, you can notice the difference. Both of these are actually razor sharp. If you're reading tiny text on a website, really, either of them, I can't see the difference with my eyes. Time for the USB microscope there, but the contrast being higher on the Galaxy, the blacks being a little blacker, can actually make it a little easier. Now let's compare this to the HTC One M8, which has an IPS class display as well. And now up top we have the HTC One M8. Again, you can see that it is a bit brighter. Otherwise, in terms of color saturation and color balance, they're both pretty similar. The HTC One seems to pop a little bit more because it's brighter, so that's going to fool you into thinking that the colors are a little more saturated. And now for comparison what text looks like on a website, this is our Moto E review on Mobile Tech Review. And other than the difference in brightness, you can see that the text, of course, is going to be a bit larger on a 5.5-inch phone here, so that makes it a little easier to see. But in terms of overall clarity, if we zoom in, it's hard to really pinpoint a strong difference between the two of these because these are both so high resolution. The HTC One M8, of course, being a full HD display down here. So some of you are going to say that I am anti-progress and all that kind of thing. I know there was a couple of people screaming on Twitter, but honestly, I think that the super-duper high resolution on this phone is more for marketing purposes because 4K, everything is just so hot right now. Why not make a 4K phone? In terms of potentially consuming more battery power, more CPU, GPU cycles, all that kind of thing, versus any real significant difference in sharpness, I mean, LG did manage to get pretty good battery life and performance out of this, so we're not complaining that it has, by any means, a 4K display, just not seeing the huge benefit. So here's what the camera UI looks like for our 13-megapixel camera. You can actually swipe up. It's pretty neat just to change between front and back cameras. We've got our controls showing here. If they hide, it's kind of a mystery. You just got to start swiping to find them. You can tap to shoot a picture as well. Tap to focus, too. And we have a bunch of modes here. Pretty simple UI for there. Panorama, dual shooting, front and rear camera at the same time, auto, we have flash control on there, more settings, you got a timer, you can control your HDR, whether it's on auto mode, where you're going to save the camera to, what resolutions you want to shoot in, or resolution. So tap to focus, shoot. It is really fast to focus, I have to say. Even if you're talking, 70 milliseconds, that difference can be noticeable, and it can focus quite close too. Now, with video recording, you can go up to 4K and just tap the button to start recording video, and there it is. And the optical image stabilization is going to make everything really nice and smooth, even if my hand is not so nice and smooth. Tap the button to start recording video, and there it is. And the optical image stabilization is going to make everything really nice and smooth, even if my hand is not. And we recorded that in 4K. There's a sample photo of lots of tomatoes. In good lighting, it takes really nice pictures. I wouldn't mind a little bit more saturation. It's a little to the warm side, but it's pretty nice overall. That's really sharp right there. You can see the onion skins. Read that label really, really easily. That's pretty nice. The two of them together, happy family. It's actually nice in terms of the color exposure there, and the contrast is very good. Now, when we get to indoor shots, here's our little kitty, and one of these is a 4K video. I can tell you that the 1080p video has way too much contrast in it. It's kind of like overkill contrast. So I shoot in 4K just for that reason. So there we have 4K kitty. You can see quite a lot of detail on his fur. It's a 4K kitty. Oh. And I have to say, I still like the Samsung Galaxy S5's 4K recording a bit better for somewhat more natural looking detail. Now, low light photography, at first this looks pretty good. This was not a very well lit indoor location. The contrast is pretty high. As we zoom in, and we're not going beyond 100% zoom there, you can see that some details start to look a little bit watercolory and painted on. So indoors, not quite as impressive as it is outdoors or in good indoor lighting, like at our lovely supermarket where we have pretty good lighting. So it's a very nice camera. I don't think anybody's going to be disappointed. I wouldn't call it the best camera phone on the market, even though the laser focusing is pretty darn cool and does help in low light particularly. You don't have as much of the hunting to focus going on here. It even beats the HTC One M8 when it comes to that. So how about the speakers? We have the volume turned up a little bit over half right now. We've got a YouTube video of our Moto E review. Let's see how it sounds. Not that it's a real high-end flagship phone, but it's $129. No contract, outright, no commitment. We're going to look at it now. So here it is, the Moto E. Motorola, whenever they come out with a phone, much talked about it. They're doing interesting things. First, a little background. Yes, Motorola is firing out of here. That makes the phones, that is owned by Google. They bought them a while ago, but now Google. Even my hand over the speaker, actually, it really didn't affect the volume that much. That's pretty impressive, actually. But it still sounds like a smartphone, but it's not bad. It's pretty adequate. So how about the on-screen keyboard? It's not bad. It's actually pretty roomy right here. I love having the separate number keys available. And LG says it's a learning keyboard, and it can actually kind of micro-adjust the size of the rows there depending on what you're typing and how often you make mistakes on the keyboard. So pretty neat stuff there. So how about battery life? You've got a 5.5-inch display. You've got a quad-core CPU. You've got all that inside here. Miraculously good. 3,000 milliamp battery. That's a high-capacity battery, sure, but my word, this thing is just really hard to kill. If you play Real Racing 3 day in, day out, all day long, you're going to kill it. But for normal use, web browsing, social networking, you got push email turned on. You say you want to watch an episode on Netflix, catch up on True Blood or something like that for an episode. You can do that, and you probably won't kill the battery in a day. It's that good. And on our way to testing our gaming with Asphalt 8, just going to show you the multitasking UI here, which is pretty cool. You can pull up dual window at any time, which doesn't mean you can necessarily dual window these particular apps, but as you get more, that's what it looks like. And just this is everything that's running in the background before we're going to launch Asphalt 8, so you can see. So here we are in our mighty Dodge Dart starter car. Sigh. It's going very smoothly. And there's a nice animation of a very bad wreck. Absolutely handles the game fine. What's really nice is the 5.5-inch display. Makes the game that much more enjoyable. And despite the fact that it is such a high-resolution display, it's not bogging a game down at all. It's handling it just fine. So that's a drunken drive through Asphalt 8 on the LG G3. So the LG G3 faces some pretty stiff competition. God knows there might be a bigger screen iPhone 6 coming out this fall. We've got the Samsung Galaxy S5, the Sony Xperia Z2 for you folks in Europe who can get one. Us in the US, not so much just yet, sadly. And the HTC One M8. Just to name a couple of the big competitors, and for those of you who really like big screen phones, there's also the Galaxy Note 3 from Samsung. So how do you pick? Well, it's not easy. We'll be doing some smackdowns. We will probably do a whole lot more of those once there are U.S. carrier versions out, so you can really see exactly what you're going to be getting on the U.S. market. Though, like I said, really very little should be changed other than software customizations on here. But what's in favor of this? 5.5-inch display in a body that's really not much bigger than some of the 5 to 5.1-inch phones on the market. It's always nicer to have a big screen. More resolution, nobody's going to complain about that, even if it really is hard to perceive the difference. The viewing angles on the screen, that's a little bit of a complaint that I have about the screen, and the fact that it doesn't get that bright, though. So that holds me back from saying this is the best display on the market, even if it's the highest resolution for a globally available or soon to be available phone. Battery life on this, the fact you can take the battery out, there's a microSD card slot, all really good things. Camera, not bad at all. It's really a very solid phone. So that's the LG G3. It's going to be available this summer on pretty much every major carrier, and I'm sure we're going to revisit it again once it comes out for the U.S. carriers. We'll look at their versions, and then we'll analyze voice quality and data speeds yet again one more time and see what software they add on top of it. But pretty much you're looking at what you're going to get here with some software tweaks, like I said. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit our website for the full review, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.